Okay, so you guys can still see my screen. We're talking about destructuring, and it's a way that we can take some data from those composite data types that we talked about, whether that's an array or an object. And this is going to become really popular in React when we're dealing with this thing called props or state. So we're going to kind of hit that later. We're going to hit that tomorrow, I think, as we introduce props. But it's a way that we can take out and basically slice up our data so that way we can grab the information that we need. And so let's just even do this. I have some definitions here. Destructuring is a way to, let me Alt-Z this. Destructuring is a way to unpack values from an array or properties from an object into distinct variables that we can access and use. Uses a very similar syntax to array and object literals, and destructuring can be used for variable declaration and variable assignment. So I kind of don't love those, so I'm going to come here and do this. And so we're going to basically, I'll get rid of this. We'll start with this. We'll deal with the spread and rest operators, and then we'll do this. Perfect. Okay. So we've got this array of animals, and it's got a couple different values, right? It's got horse, dog, fish, cat, bird. So if we're looking at the platform and sort of following it, there's a couple different things we could do. If I wanted the first animal, what I could do is I could say animals of 0, right? And that's going to give me the animal that's in the first index position, which we know how to do, right? That's something that's not foreign to us. But sometimes it can get kind of confusing on exactly which portion of the array that it's in, or a different way. This is sort of what we call syntactic sugar. So it just makes it easier to read. It's a different way of writing it. Yes, you can accomplish it by using this, right? But then when ES6 came in, it helps us understand or write it in a little bit more of an efficient way. So instead of saying the first animal, and I say equals animals index 0, I can say this. So if I come here, come to my code, I can do const first animal equals animals. Now you might ask yourself, what on earth is going on? Great question. So with ES6, what it allows us to do is destructure or take a portion out of our composite type and do something with it. So in this case, we are saying const, and because we're dealing with an array, and this is really important, because we're dealing with an array, we have the bracket here, right? The bracket indicates, hey, we're dealing with an array. And then we're saying first animal. And this is going to equal animals. So what we do is, this is our variable we're creating. So this is the name of our variable. This can be anything. This could be unicorn. It could be cupcake. It could be anything you want. We called it first animal because that makes sense. And then that equals, and then we give it our actual array that we are pulling from, right? And so if I were to run this, it is going to give me horse, right? Again, this is the same thing as saying const first animal equals animals 0. Right? It's saying the exact same thing and doing the exact same thing. When we get more advanced and when we start dealing with React, you're going to see this. So right now you might be like, what's the point of this? As we start dealing with these things, as we start dealing with state and props and actually passing in data, it's going to become really important. So again, just kind of put this in the back of your mind, but that allows us to grab the first animal. This is implying that it's at position 0. And we'll see kind of if we wanted position 1, how would we do that? And it's implying that, so then it gives us horse. It gives us horse, right? So what we could also do, and this is really where it comes in handy, is when we're just doing one thing, it doesn't necessarily seem like it's going to be that big of a deal. But let's say I wanted to get a whole bunch of different animals. I wanted to get my first, my second, and my third animal. Well, I could do it this way and create 3 different lines, right? 3 different lines of code, or I could do it this way, right? And I could come in here and I could say, so I'm going to say getting multiple values. Perfect. And so now it didn't like that I was I had already declared. Again, these act like variables, so they're doing the same thing. So if you've already done it up here and I try to do it down here, it's going to say, wait a second, what's going on? So now what happens is when I say const first animal, comma, second animal, that is going to get me the first and the second value. I can do that for third, fourth, fifth. I can do, I can continue to do that if I wanted. Let's say I wanted to just get the first 3 animals. I could do that. And that's really where this comes in handy. It's just making it, instead of doing it 3, again, you could do in 3 different lines. It'll operationally work the exact same way, but doing it this way allows us just to do it in 1 line. It's syntactic sugar, and we'll see when we get to React why that's going to be important in the future. Now, let's say that you did have a, let's say that you did already have a variable, because this is only just really declaring variables of first animal. So if I were to console log, or console.log second animal, this is, again, they act just like variables. But let's say I already had a second animal. Let's say I already had a second animal variable, right? And it was equal to cheetah. And I just, for some other portion of my code, that is already declared. Now, what I can do is I can actually do something like this, is I can say, hey, I want to grab this information, but I want to call it this. And so if you look here, so if we specify the property name, password, that's going to access, and this is for an object, the same sort of thing. This really is going to come in handy with an object, is let's say that I'm grabbing this information of password, but I want to call it, I'm going to use something else. I'm going to call it something else. I just do a colon. And then what I want that new variable's name to be. And so that way, if I do already have a variable and I don't want to create or redefine that variable, I can say, hey, grab this key of password, but we're going to create a variable called hash password, which kind of puts me onto our objects. So this is arrays. Somebody asked, what if I wanted to get a whole bunch of them? You could use a loop. There is something called the spread and rest operators that I would encourage you guys to look at. That is, there's a whole bunch of different things right here, to where if we wanted to get, let's say that I wanted to grab the first and second animals, but I wanted to get an array of the remaining animals, I could do that by doing ... and then other animals. And other animals is now going to equal the rest of those. So if I wanted to do, if I wanted to get a whole bunch of them, I could do for loops. There's a whole bunch of different ways I could do it. This is going to, if we're doing an object, if I do ... person, that's going to make a copy of that object. So it's going to get all of the values for that, and then create a variable called person that has all of those values. So that's a great question. You would use the rest or the spread operator there. I want to talk quickly about objects because they are sort of the same, sort of not, but really, really similar to how we do it. Instead of, if we're dealing with an object here, instead of dealing with this, if I wanted to get a person, or let's say I wanted to get the first and the last name, all I would do is, because this is an object, I've got a curly bracket. I get the value here, and these are going to match. These are going to match the key names. So here I'm saying I want to get the first name, and I'm calling it first name. Again, if I wanted to call it, FN for like first name, I could say FN. And now I'm saying, hey, go get the value at first name, at that property, get this value and assign it to a variable of FN. I can do the same thing with last name. Perfect. And I can grab those values. But this allows us to basically dissect and grab information out of our object. So that way we can do something with it. Let's say, again, I just wanted to get the first and the last name, which is a common thing that we'll do. This is really, really, really common. I just say first name. It's going to grab the first name. Last name. It's going to grab the last name of my person object. So the structure is the same thing. The structure is the same way, right? Except I just have a curly bracket here. And then I put my object there. And then now if I wanted to, console.log first name, last name. It's going to console log Bob and Marley. Bob Marley. So again, it might seem like, wait, we could just do it like this, person.email or person.password, or the same way, the bracket notation way. You could do it, but this is going to be a way that when we are starting to deal with objects and certain things, and when we use something called state, it's really going to come in handy. So that's us destructuring. Again, you can do rest and spread on objects as well. So if you wanted to get a whole bunch of information, you could do that. So if you wanted first name, last name, and you want the remaining stuff, a catch-all, to attributes, you could do that. You just do ... That gets the remaining values there. Or if we, again, wanted to make a copy, so it's not we're not affecting the direct object, but I want to make a copy of the object, I could say person copy equals ... person, and that'll make a copy of my entire person. And so I'll make a copy of this and then assign it to this variable here. So this is just this is not us technically destructuring. I guess it kind of is. It's just us using the spread operator or the rest operator, I think, technically. Okay. Any questions on that? I wanted to make sure I go over that because I know that you guys have this predict destructuring here, where we've got following 5 blocks of code, predict the output. So if it is comma or something if I wanted just the second one for an array, I have to put a comma, and that sort of skips, goes from index position 0, comma to 1. So now this is going to get other random car, which would be Mercedes. And if I wanted the Honda, right, then I put 2 commas. So you can kind of think about it as like us just moving index positions. And I can grab, you know, if there was 2 commas there, then I could grab Honda. Any questions on this? Let's put a 1 in the chat if this makes sense. Put a 0 if it does not. Okay. I'm going to stop the recording there.